Welcome to the first Studymas video. This is the first out of many videos that I will be uploading in the Studymas series for the month of December to help you enhance your study routine, and hopefully it will also allow you to obtain a better understanding of how you should study your school material. When it comes to note-taking, you might have seen pictures of aesthetically looking notes online such as these, and the reality is no one has time for this. Unless you are the perfect student who has hours to spend to make your notes look pretty, 99% of the student population simply don't have the spare time, especially if you are someone who is a full-time student. There is just not enough minutes in the day to spend on creating notes that look like this, so I don't want you guys to be fooled and have the mindset that you need to make your notes look aesthetically pleasing to do well in your classes. There are different note-taking methods that you can use to make your notes look more organized without having to spend a lot of time doing so. I used to have really unorganized and unformatted notes that look like this, and in this video, I will be going over the top 3 different note-taking methods that has helped me transform my notes to look more like this. Not only did this boost my motivation to study for my exam, it also helped me to effectively study and understand the material, which then increased my grades from a 3.5 to a 4.0 student. I will also demonstrate how I revised my notes from my 149 lecture slides and go over different strategies on how to effectively study the notes. To take my notes, I used the iPad Pro 11-inch, and this is the 2018 with 64 gigabytes. I also have the Apple Pencil 2 and the Logitech keyboard case with trackpad. You also don't need to have an iPad to take organized notes. You can always use a laptop or old-fashioned pen and paper. The first method is using the Cornell Method. This method has a systematic structure in place for you to organize your notes in a way that allows you to be able to go back and quiz yourself without having to use flashcards. The layout is very straightforward. With the Cornell Method, the paper is divided into 3 simple sections. The first section is the Q column, or also known as the recall column. In this section, you want to put main ideas for your notes such as questions, vocabulary words, or subjects. The next column is the main body, which is also known as your notes column. Things to include in this section are the main topic notes, answers to the questions or definitions to your vocabulary words. This column goes hand in hand with the recall column and is good to add a space between different main topics and your notes so that it will be easier for you to tell where the notes for that main topic has ended. The last section is the summary portion, where you make 1 to 2 short sentences to summarize what the notes that you took on this page is about. For me personally, I found this section not useful, and a lot of time I end up spending way too much time coming up with summary sentences, so I usually avoid this section and only use the first 2 sections for my notes. Here is an example of my notes using the Cornell Method. As you can see here, it's very organized, and I'm going to show you guys how I was able to use this method to take notes from my lecture slides. So these are the slides from my dermatology lecture, and before I start my note-taking process, I always convert my slides into a 1-page summary using this website so that I can feel a little bit less overwhelmed because my slides turn from 149 pages into 19 pages. Once I have that done, I will split screen with my iPad and have my lecture slides on the left and a blank Cornell note paper on the right. By the way, you guys can download this template that I am using with the link in my description box. For my note titles, here are some of my favorite fonts that I like to use. When taking notes, it's very important to not rewrite every single word from the lecture slides. I only write things that are likely to be on the exam, and I also use abbreviations to speed up my note-taking process. Here's a list of abbreviations that I use for my notes. So for example, I can go ahead and skip the first few slides because it's just going over the outline and the objective for the lecture. This slide introduces a case for the lecture, which I will also skip because this case will be repeated in another slide and it will be pointless to rewrite the case again in my notes. For this next slide, it talks about the skin structure and function, which I will also skip because it's very unlikely for my professor to have a question about this on the exam. Since I am in pharmacy school, I know that the questions will be focused focused a lot more on the medications, so this is why I will only read this slide and not take any notes on it. Okay, this next slide talks about the risk factors for skin diseases. This slide is important because as pharmacists, we need to know what put our patients at risk, so I will be writing this into my notes. You can see here that I am writing risk factors as my main point in the recall column, and then on the right, I will be making bullet points for each risk factor. This next slide shows different skin assessment, and I will not be including this in my notes because I remember my professor mentioned in class that we do not need to differentiate how the skin looks. Moving on to the next slide, this is a summary of a patient assessment tool. This slide is pretty straightforward and I will also just read this as well. It is very unlikely for my professor to ask how to assess a patient because then the test wouldn't be as challenging. However, in the next slide, this is when things starts to get juicy. We are moving on to topical products, and this slide is very important, especially the occlusive portion of the slide. As pharmacists, we have to differentiate which topical formulation has the most to the least occlusive activity, also known as how thick the product is, because the thicker the product, the more hydration it will provide for a patient. So if a patient's skin is very dry, we would want to recommend an ointment-based product because it has the highest occlusive activity and will therefore provide the most moisture and hydration to the patient's skin. So in my notes, I will go ahead and skip a line and then write occlusive formulation on the left, and then to the right I will write the same order like the slides. I won't include the first 2 bullet points because again, this is very straightforward and I can understand it from reading the slides. For the last point, I will add it to my notes like this. Hopefully by now, you get a better understanding of how I take my notes. Again, I don't rewrite every single word from the lecture slides, and I only write things that I absolutely need to go back and review before the exam. So here is my completed notes for the lecture using the Cornell method. One thing that I really like about this method is that you can actually go back and cover the right side and quiz your knowledge by reading only the left side. This is useful for when you review your notes before the exam, and it saves a lot of time because you don't have to make flashcards since the recall column acts as the front of the flashcard and the note column is the back side of the flashcard. The second note-taking method is the box method. If you have watched my other videos, you are probably familiar with this method by now. Basically, with this method, you would write a central point or subject as a header, and then below it, you would write notes about the main point. For example, here are some notes that I took about cardiovascular diseases. On this left side, I wrote down different types of cardiovascular diseases, and then I made boxes that provide more details about the diseases. I find that using this method saves a lot of note-taking space because if I were to write the same notes with the Cornell method, it would then look like this instead. So for the box method, it's just another way to organize your information. I think this is my favorite method to use because I like the layout of how it looks and it makes it easier for me to study when I see the different diseases side by side. Here are some other examples of my box method. The third note-taking method is the charting method. For this method, I prefer to type it in applications like Word document or Excel sheet. This is a really good method for when you have to compare different ideas and group similar ideas together. For me, I normally use this method when I study medication pharmacology. In this example, you can see that I made a 3x5 chart and I grouped medications that are in the same drug class together. But I also have a column for mechanism of action and side effects. By making the chart, this allows me to compare and contrast contrast different medication classes with each other, and is also a really good way to understand and learn the study material. Charting helps me to recognize the features that are unique to that group, and as a student, you can always arrange the chart in a way that help you compare topics as well. As you can see here, charting is a really great way to compare different topics or ideas with each other. To summarize everything in this video, the 3 note-taking method that we went over is the Cornell Method, the box method, and the charting method. Study tips that were mentioned in this video include to not rewrite everything in your notes from your slides or textbook, use abbreviations to speed up your writing process, ignore slides or points that are unlikely to be tested on the exam, avoid spending a lot of time making your notes look pretty, and spend more time studying your notes. Effectively review your notes by quizzing yourself, and compare and contrast different topics or ideas to one another using the charting method. Anyways, that is it for my video. I hope it was helpful and gave you a better understanding of how you should study your notes more effectively. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to hit like and subscribe for more study videos like this. I will be posting more study videos for the Studymas series in December, so make sure you hit that bell button to get the latest notification for when I upload. I will talk to you guys again very soon. Bye guys!